Joining me today on the Capital TV show, Leon Edward Panetta. He's an American Democratic Party politician who has served in several different public office positions, including Secretary of Defense, CIA Director, White House Chief of Staff, and as a U.S. representative from California. I'm so proud to interview him for the second time during my stay in the U.S., and he's always welcome to be a featured guest on my show. My first question is about your evaluation for the Biden administration's record 1 year after it occupies the White House.
Well, I think that the jury is still out as to any kind of conclusion as to the Biden administration at this point. They've obviously had some successes with COVID relief. With the infrastructure bill, significant bill to try to deal with infrastructure issues. Their general handling of COVID has been, I think, very aggressive and, in the effort to try to get ahead of it. It's not easy. It's obviously a difficult virus to get a handle on, but I think they've tried to do their best. The economy seems to be doing better. Yesterday, they had good growth numbers in the economy, along with jobs. And certainly the president, I think, recently has shown United States leadership with trying to unify NATO in dealing with the Ukraine. But at the same time, there obviously have been failures. Afghanistan was a failure in the way it was handled. I think the failure to pass Build Back Better and the voting rights proposals, that too has been not very successful for this administration. Immigration issues have not been handled well. We still have terrible immigration issues to deal with. Inflation, obviously, in the economy.
Lots of problems, Excellency. Yeah. You have so much experience dealing in DC politics, in Washington, the political atmosphere. How do you describe it in the nation's capital at present?
I think that I've often said in my 50 years of public life that I've seen Washington at its best and Washington at its worst. The good news is I've seen Washington work, where Republicans and Democrats were willing to work together, even though they had their political differences. They worked together, and we were able to accomplish a great deal as far as issues helping this country. Recently, I think Washington has been at its worst. It's very partisan, very polarized. There's a lot of gridlock, very difficult for Republicans and Democrats to seem to work together. And so I would say that right now, when you look at Washington, there's a lot of dysfunction as far as the ability of both parties to govern.
You are a former director of the CIA. Is the CIA doing a good job in reference to China? It seems that the Biden administration has a strategic focus on China.
The CIA obviously has a lot of responsibility to provide intelligence on the key issues that face our country. And there are obviously a number of danger points today, as we all know, facing the United States. It's not just Russia, it's not just China, it's Iran, it's North Korea, it's failed states in the Middle East, cyber. There are a number of issues that are confronting the U.S. And the CIA is responsible for providing accurate intelligence on what's happening in each of those areas. And I know that I'm sure they're doing that with regards to China. China has never been an easy target for the CIA. It's been very difficult to try to find out exactly what they're planning and what they're doing. But having said that, I think the CIA is getting good intelligence on China. I think the Biden administration has made clear that that with regards to China, there are lines that have to be drawn, particularly on the South China Sea, and particularly with regards to Taiwan and other areas. At the same time, there is a lot of economic relationships with China, and I think that it is important to try to maintain a dialogue with China at the same time. So I think right now we have pretty good intelligence on how to deal with China.
Do you think that the Biden administration will sign a deal will revive the JCPOA deal, and what kind of deal we are expecting with Iran?
Well, obviously, President Biden wanted to be able to return to the deal that was worked out between the United States and our allies. It was a deal that provided some limitations on Iran with regards to their ability to enrich nuclear fuel. And the fact was that it was working. The inspections were working, and it was. It's not everything a lot of people wanted, but at the same time, it did put limits on their ability to enrich nuclear fuel and to march towards a nuclear weapon. When the United States walked away from that deal, obviously Iran then continued aggressively to enrich fuel, and I think has moved much closer to the possibility of developing a nuclear weapon. They're now in negotiations. They're trying to see if they can get back to some limitations. The problem is that the government in Iran is much more hardline than the one that we were dealing with before. I think it's a difficult negotiation. I hope that they can arrive at some agreement. I think it's in the interest of the peace of the world if they could. But I think it's going to be difficult. I think it's going to be a difficult challenge.
Yeah. Do you think that the Biden administration will risk the relationship with their allies in the Middle East, like UAE, to please Iran? And how about the decision to reinstall the Houthis as a terrorist group or on the FTO list?
Well, I think it's very important for the United States to maintain our alliance with the moderate Arab countries in the Middle East. I really think that our best ability to deal with both terrorism and Iran is to maintain a strong relationship both with Israel and the other Arab countries in working out a solution to dealing with Iran. So I would hope that any kind of agreement with regards to what happens on their nuclear ability is a deal that we would consult with both our Arab allies as well as Israel on.
Do you think that the Houthis, they are targeting now, they used to target Saudi Arabia, now they are targeting Musaffah area, they're targeting civilians in UAE, and this area is near Al-Zafra base. That indicates that Iran has no limit in destroying or destabilizing the safe countries or the prosper countries like UAE. If you are now in the administration, what you would do?
Well, that has been a consistent problem with Iran. Iran has been a nation that has supported terrorism and continues to destabilize that region, and for that matter, supports terrorism around the world. Therefore, it is extremely important to recognize that if we are to have any kind of negotiations with Iran, it can't just deal with nuclear. It has to deal with their missile development and their support of terrorism. Those are issues that we also have to confront if we're going to be able to have any kind of relationship with Iran.
All right. Is there a rift in the Emirates' relationship with the U.S. as a result of the F-35 deal?
I think that the United States recognizes that the UAE has been a very good ally. I certainly felt when I was both CIA Director and Secretary of Defense that my relationship with the UAE, both with regards to intelligence as well as security issues, was very good. They were a very good ally. and I know there was an agreement to try to see if we could sell them F-35s. I hope the United States is able to find a way to make that deal work and be able to provide those planes to the UAE. I think that's important to do.
We talk in the first place in this interview about the challenges after 1 year with the Biden in the White House. The question is Vladimir Putin going to invade Ukraine, in your opinion?
That's the question of the day.
Exactly.
There's no question that that Putin is moving aggressively here. Has almost 130,000 troops along the border. Is building up their forces in Belarus, and you know, it represents a real threat to a democratic, sovereign country of Ukraine.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the good thing is that I think President Biden and our NATO allies have made very clear that Russia will pay a heavy price if they decide to invade the Ukraine. They've been unified on economic sanctions. They've been unified in providing military assistance. They've been unified with regards to the possibility of using cyber to be able to protect the Ukraine. There are a number of very, very good steps here that I think make clear to Putin and to Russia that if they do this, they will pay a heavy price. And that's important because Putin has had his way in Georgia. He's had his way in Crimea. He's had his way in Syria. He's had his way in Libya. He's had his way with regards to cyber attacks in the United States. And he hasn't paid a price. Finally, the United States and NATO are saying, you invade, you will pay a heavy price. That's the right thing to do. And I think ultimately Putin is going to have to think twice about whether he wants to pay that price. I don't know what he's going to do. Nobody does at this point. But I think the United States and our allies are taking the right step to try to deter him.
Mm-hmm. Great. How do you see the future on Afghanistan? You wrote lots of, I think you wrote a lot about that country in your memoirs, Worthy Fights. So can you tell us more?
Well, the reason we went into Afghanistan was really for two important missions. One was to go after those who attacked us on 9/11, bin Laden and Al-Qaeda, and make sure that we brought them to justice. The other was to make sure that Afghanistan would never again become a safe haven for terrorism. We achieved the first mission. I was proud at the CIA to have been involved with the mission that went after bin Laden, and we did that successfully. Unfortunately, on the second mission, we failed, and Afghanistan is now in control of the Taliban, and the Taliban, I'm afraid, will continue to provide a safe haven for terrorism in Afghanistan. So I think we have to be very vigilant that Al-Qaeda and other terrorist groups don't reestablish themselves in Afghanistan and become a threat to our country and to other countries as well.
Do you think that Iran will fill the vacuum in Afghanistan and will take advantage from the situation there?
Iran has always tried to figure out how it could deal with Afghanistan. And they've made some efforts, not very successful in the past. I'm sure they'll try to inject themselves in. I'm sure they'll try to see if they could build some kind of relationship with the Taliban in Afghanistan. But I think the Taliban are a very difficult group to develop any relationship with at this time.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Secretary, how do you assess the process of reform in Saudi Arabia?
I think that Saudi Arabia has made some important decisions with regards to economic reform. I think they recognize that if Saudi Arabia is going to be successful, they're going to have to create some diversity in their economy. I think they've made an effort to do that. I think the big issue that they still confront is whether or not they are going to move towards recognizing that their people need to have the opportunity to have a greater say in how Saudi Arabia is governed. There's got to be, I think, greater reform with regards to allowing the people of Saudi Arabia to play more of a role in determining what happens in Saudi Arabia.
What is your opinion about the Abraham Accord, and how do you see the courage or the willing or the intention that MBZ, the Crown Prince of Abu Dhabi, Mohammed bin Zayed, have for peace in the region?
I think the Abraham Accords are very important. I think that the ability of Arab countries like the UAE and others to recognize Israel, the existence of Israel, and then try to establish a relationship, a trade relationship with Israel. I think it's very important for the Middle East. And ultimately, I hope it can be very important in trying to develop an agreement between Israel and the Palestinians, because ultimately, getting a peace agreement between Israel and the Palestinians is extremely important to finding peace in the Middle East.
My last question, as a former congressman for California, do you think the Democrats will lose a majority in Congress in November, midterm?
Well, one thing I've learned in politics is never to try to forecast what's going to happen in an election, particularly 6 or 7 months before that election takes place. You have to.
But the government elections in the states that give you an idea how things is going on, no?
No, well, there are a couple things. Obviously, number one, the president has very low poll ratings. Number two, the Congress is not viewed with a great deal of respect at this point because of the dysfunction in Washington. We're going through redistricting, which is a process of deciding what the various congressional districts look like. And there are a lot of Republican legislatures which have developed redistricting plans that favor Republicans. But at the same time, what we're seeing is that in the end, it depends on the quality of candidates who are running in every one of these districts. If the Democrats can put up qualified candidates, then I think they can put up a good fight to retain control of the Congress. If, on the other hand, we don't have good candidates and the Republican candidates are better financed, then it could be very difficult.
Leon Panetta, thank you so much, former Secretary of Defense and former CIA Director. I'm so glad, so happy to have you in my show, and really would like to see you in person. Thank you so much.
Good to be with you, and my best to all of your listeners and viewers.
Thank you.
Hey, Maria Malouf here. Please click to like and subscribe to Maria Malouf TV YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.